Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. It would need to be a very skilled warrior, Master God Diviner said somberly, an expert who could keep us safe at all times. We need some muscle, a person with an extraordinary cultivation base, and even more importantly, shocking potential for growth. Xu Baosai was nodding his head vigorously, and Bai Xiaochun was looking at him with an intent stare. Shaking his head, Master God Diviner continued, "Don't forget, we don't know how many years we'll be in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. Therefore, we can't be sloppy in our selection. The best thing to do would be to pick someone who will likely reach core formation shortly after arriving." "You couldn't be more correct," Bai Xiaochun said, eyes sparkling. Then he laughed loudly. Master God Diviner inwardly breathed a sigh of relief. Then he said, "Junior Patriarch, I have a suggestion. Why don't you pick from either Song Ke, Ghost Fang, Nine Isles, or Beihan Lai? Which one do you think is better?" After some thought, Bai Xiaochun murmured, Any of them would do, actually. But Song Ke is my nephew, after all. Going to the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect will actually be an incredible opportunity, so the most appropriate thing would be to give that chance to him." Master God Diviner and Xu Baosai exchanged a look of surprise, but didn't dare to say any further. Instead, they merely praised Bai Xiaochun for how much he took care of his juniors. And that was how Song Ke became their muscle. Of course, none of the three of them actually went to Song Ke to tell him. Bai Xiaochun called over a disciple from the Bloodstream division and sent him to deliver the news. "I can take 5 people, and now I have 3. Next I need to pick someone to be my confidant." It didn't take much consideration for him to think of Big Fatty Zhang. Eldest brother is definitely the best choice to be my confidant. Plus, even though the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect will be new to us all, it is a river source sect, which means that eldest brother will probably be able to get some good fortune of his own. With that, gave orders to Xu Baosai and Master God Diviner to prepare for departure in 3 days. Then he flickered into motion, becoming a bright beam of light that shot off into the distance. After he left, Xu Baosai and Master God Diviner exchanged bitter smiles as they pondered what the future held for them. When Bai Xiaochun arrived at Big Fatty Zhang's Immortals Cave, he was in the middle of performing some spirit enhancements. Bai Xiaochun waited outside for a bit of time, a smile on his face, until Big Fatty Zhang finally opened the door. After seeing that it was Bai Xiaochun, he laughed heartily, then hurried out proudly with a flying sword in hand. "What do you think? A 3-fold spirit enhancement?" Bai Xiaochun looked at the sword in surprise. Apparently, Big Fatty Zhang had become shockingly skilled at spirit enhancement. He immediately offered some praise, which Big Fatty Zhang soaked up readily. "So, why have you come?" Big Fatty Zhang said. "As long as I can help out, I'll do it without even the slightest frown." Bai Xiaochun hesitated for a moment. Although it was true that Big Fatty Zhang might be able to get some good fortune in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, he would probably be a lot safer if he stayed behind in the River Defying sect. After pondering the matter briefly, he described the situation and then left Big Fatty Zhang make the choice for himself. Almost as soon as he heard what was happening, Big Fatty Zhang's eyes began to shine. Reaching out, he grabbed Bai Xiaochun's arm. "I'll go, no questions asked. The Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. That's a river source sect, right? My master said that the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect is the only place in the Eastern cultivation world where they perform 15-fold spirit enhancements. They even have a legacy technique for spirit enhancement. 9th Fatty, you definitely have to take me." Bai Xiaochun breathed a sigh of relief. Then he chatted a bit with Big Fatty Zhang to make sure he was truly determined to come along, before finally nodding in agreement. "All right, eldest brother. Meet me in 3 days at the Grand Hall on Mount River Defiance." After leaving Big Fatty Zhang, Bai Xiaochun returned to his ruined Immortals Cave on Mount River Defiance. There, he sat down cross-legged and pondered who to pick as his last Dao protector. Xiaomei and Song Junwan. Ah, what a headache. I only have 1 spot left, and there are 2 of them. What am I supposed to do? Who should I take? Actually, the truth was that even if he could take both of them along, he would do everything possible to prevent that from happening. It really didn't have anything to do with the number of spots left. After much thought, he couldn't come up with any good ideas. Therefore, he decided to stop thinking about it for a while. Closing his eyes, he slipped into meditation to calm himself and ponder what gains he might achieve in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. Deep in the night, he opened his eyes, looked around, and sighed. "I'm gonna miss this place too much," he thought, shaking his head. He still hadn't decided who to pick to fill the last Dao Protector slot. It was at that point that his expression flickered, and he looked up, a somber and even intimidating look on his face. Moments later, the air in the direction in which he looked began to ripple and distort, and a slender, graceful woman emerged. Completely ignoring his intimidating expression, she stepped forward to stand right in front of him. A fragrant aroma accompanied this young woman, who was none other than Chen Manyao. She wore a close-fitting black garment that only served to accentuate her natural beauty. As she stood there beneath the shimmering moonlight, she looked completely and utterly enticing. That was especially true when her long, luxurious hair rippled in the breeze. Furthermore, there was something charming and soul-stirring in her eyes that made her dangerously attractive. "What are you looking at me so viciously for?" she asked in a voice so soft and weak that it would cause anyone who heard it to be even more attracted to her, and would leave most men hard-pressed to resist the urge to throw her to the ground and ravage her. Bai Xiaochun looked up at her with a frown. He knew that the sect leadership had come to an agreement with whatever group backed her, which was the only reason why she had been allowed to stay in the river-defying sect. However, he still felt completely on guard against her. "What do you want?" he asked calmly. "Oh, nothing. What, I can't just come to see you." Somewhere in her eyes could be seen a trace of bitterness, like a grudge. As she looked at Bai Xiaochun, she realized that he was looking her up and down, causing a spark of aloof pride to rise in her heart. Just when she was about to continue speaking though, she suddenly realized she couldn't move a muscle, and that a third eye had appeared on Bai Xiaochun's forehead. The violet eye seemed to possess a strange power, a power that left Chen Manyao completely immobile. A moment later, her right hand began to move, completely beyond her own control. It slowly rose to one of the buttons on her garment, and undid it, revealing some of her curvaceous body that had previously been concealed under the tight fabric. After that first button was removed, Bai Xiaochun's third eye closed, and Chen Manyao's body returned to her own control. She was panting, and her forehead was beaded with cold sweat. Without even thinking about it, she backed up a few steps, her face flickering between the red of anger and the green of humiliation. "You came here for a reason," Bai Xiaochun said grimly, "and I'm not the kind of person who would pretend you haven't. I'll ask you again, what do you want?" He was actually trying to imitate the way Song Ke would talk to people, and he pulled it off more than perfectly. Chen Manyao took a breath to still her heart. Not daring to do anything rash, she backed up again, and then clasped hands and bowed deeply. "Junior Patriarch, I very much hope you'll agree to let me take the final spot." "No way," Bai Xiaochun said immediately. "Now get out of here. Junior Patriarch, please hear me out. With me at your side, you'll be able to communicate with the wildlands anytime you wish, and plus, I can find out all sorts of information for you. In addition to that, the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect has a battleship that can take you to the wildlands. My home. If you agree, I'd be willing to share some of the secrets of the wildlands with you. Another thing you can't forget is that I know a lot about the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect, and I can even," at this point, before she could even finish speaking, Bai Xiaochun waved his sleeve, causing a wind to wrap around her in preparation to throw her out. "Bai Xiaochun," she gushed, "there are clues about Du Lingfei in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect. Take me with you and I can help you find them. Only I can do that, because I'm a wildlander. The agents in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect know me, but they don't know you. I'll even swear an oath to help track down those clues." As she spoke, the wind around her slowed to a crawl, but when she finished speaking, it picked up again and carried her off of Mount River Defiance. Even as her anxiety built to a crescendo, Bai Xiaochun's cold voice echoed in her ears. "Meet me in 2 days at the Grand Hall on Mount River Defiance." Having sent Chen Manyao away, Bai Xiaochun sat there silently at the edge of the ruins of his immortals cave, looking up into the starry sky. If Chen Manyao hadn't spoken that one name, he would never have even considered taking her. However, that name left him unsettled. By now, even he wasn't sure exactly how he felt about Du Lingfei. It was almost as if nothing about her was real except for what had happened in those mountains. "Maybe all I want is an answer," he murmured, "and the truth." As he sat there beneath the moonlight, his eyes flickered with reminiscence. Time passed. Soon, the moon rose again, and now, there was only 1 day left. Bai Xiaochun had filled all 5 spots for his Dao protectors, and couldn't stop thinking about the benefits and drawbacks of going to the unfamiliar Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect. On the final day, he went to visit Song Junwan and Hu Xiaomei to bid them farewell, which left him feeling very down. Finally, he sat down cross-legged to pass the final night. It was around the 3rd watch when Frigid Sect appeared next to him, without word or sound to herald his coming. He looked down at Bai Xiaochun, saw the sadness on his face, and sighed. Bai Xiaochun opened his eyes, looked at him, then looked away without saying a word. Xiaochun, frigid sect said in his ancient voice, you're going to be leaving tomorrow. There are some things I need to explain to you. Master Godwind, Crimson Soul and I have come to an important decision. Overlooking the fact that Bai Xiaochun was ignoring him, he smiled and sat down next to him. I know that your goal in practicing cultivation is to live forever. The thing is, all of us want to live forever. That's one of the reasons why we all work hard at cultivation. Unfortunately, on the road that leads to living forever, there are other things that pop up, things that are sometimes even more important than our final goal. Right now, you probably don't understand what I'm talking about, but by the time you reach my age, I think you will. The reason we cultivators can increase our longevity has to do with our cultivation bases. With foundation establishment, you get an additional 100 years of life. With core formation, 500. And did you know that nascent soul cultivators receive an increase, at minimum, of 1,000 years? Do the math yourself. If you reach nascent soul, how long can you live? Frigid sect looked expectantly at Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun had been planning to ignore frigid sect no matter what he said. Regardless of how much he understood the decisions made by the sect, that didn't stop him from feeling depressed about the situation. However, to hear frigid sect bring up this topic, the topic upon which he was most focused in life, and in which all his hopes lay, ensured that he couldn't hold himself back from doing the calculations. It really was simple. Upon realizing that after reaching nascent soul, he would be able to live for 2,000 years, Bai Xiaochun's eyes shone, and his heart began to beat. 2,000 years, he murmured, licking his lips. He might have been able to refuse to think about the nascent soul stage if he hadn't calculated the exact numbers involved. But now, he could hardly refrain from panting, and his desire to reach nascent soul was even more intense than ever. And again, that's the minimum. If you use special techniques and methods, or certain spirit medicines, you can increase your longevity by multiple times over. Of course, people who do that have to pay a heavy price. Although their cultivation bases are not limited in any way, they are doomed to die eventually, no matter what happens. Such people live a long time, but not forever. I'm in that very situation. Frigid sect sighed and looked at Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun looked back at him. Do a lot of people do that? Yes. But don't forget that the path cultivators travel is a long and winding one. From chi condensation to foundation establishment, from foundation establishment to core formation, from core formation to nascent soul. Many people are ejected off of the path before they can get very far. Out of 100 chi condensation cultivators, one will be lucky to reach foundation establishment. Of course, that still leaves us with a lot of foundation establishment cultivators, but out of every 100, one might reach core formation, if they are lucky. When it comes to nascent soul, well, even if you count all the people who have died, the spirit stream division hasn't even produced 10 of them, even going back years and years. Given that, do you think reaching nascent soul is difficult? Frigid sect sighed again before continuing. It most definitely is difficult. The process is a challenging one, to say the least. Either you succeed and become a nascent soul Taoist master, or you fail and die. Of course, sects in the middle reaches have much higher rates of success among cultivators who attempt to step into the nascent soul stage. However, that doesn't change the difficulty level for the people involved. Bai Xiaochun didn't say anything. He knew that nascent soul was a difficult stage to reach, and that even with his Heaven Dao Gold Core, he would only have a slightly higher chance of success. Xiaochun, although becoming a hostage in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect means losing a bit of freedom and independence, the truth is that you have an extremely rare opportunity. The Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect is a river source sect, responsible for watching over all of the eastern heavenspan river. The spiritual energy there is very strong, far beyond that of the middle reaches. They have all sorts of unique techniques and divine abilities, plus many types of fantastic spirit medicines. After you get there, you can take advantage of all the power available in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect to increase your chances of reaching the nascent soul stage. Frigid sect was slowly raising his voice, causing it to pound into Bai Xiaochun's ears. Bai Xiaochun could hear the sincerity in frigid sect's voice, and could tell that he wasn't being dishonest in any way. It really was true that he would have a better chance of reaching nascent soul in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. That, along with his Heaven Dao Gold Core, wouldn't give him a 100% chance of success. However, he would have an astonishing 70% chance. Thinking of the matter that way, going to the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect wasn't a bad thing at all. In fact, it was actually incredible good fortune when it came to his cultivation. Much of Bai Xiaochun's negative feelings were already draining away, and his eyes were beginning to shine brightly. If you become a nascent soul cultivator in the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect, you can even join their Parliament of Elders, and would gain a relatively high level of power and influence. At that point, even being a hostage wouldn't matter, and wouldn't be an obstacle to you in any way. In fact, your hostage status would be a shield of sorts to you as a member of the Parliament of Elders. Furthermore, if you become a nascent soul cultivator there, it would be of incredible benefit to the river-defying sect. After all of the analysis provided by Frigid Sect, Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Patriarch, he said quietly, I think it's a big waste for you to be a cultivator. You should go off and become a diplomat. Frigid Sect roared with laughter before tousling Bai Xiaochun's hair. I'm not finished yet. Stop interrupting. Then, his expression turned serious. Xiaochun, much like foundation establishment and core formation, there are 3 ways to enter the nascent soul stage. The first is the simplest, and yet the most dangerous because of the high failure rate. Although you can make the attempt multiple times this way, every failure leads to a loss of longevity. That method is using nascent soul pills. Bai Xiaochun was listening very intently. There was no information in the sect records about the nascent soul stage, so this was his first time hearing such an explanation. Frigid Sect shook his head before continuing, that method leads to a low-grade nascent soul, with only a slim chance of ever becoming a diva. It is also the most commonly used method. The second method is by using 5 elements diva beast souls. So-called diva beast souls are the souls of dead diva realm beasts. All such souls have a certain measure of 5 elements power, and cultivators who step into the nascent soul stage using them not only become very powerful, they also have a good chance of becoming devas. Bai Xiaochun was shaken, and immediately committed the words, 5 elements diva beast soul, to memory. Never could he have imagined that it was possible to reach the nascent soul stage with the soul of a diva-level beast. Then there's the third method. Frigid Sect paused for a moment, his eyes shining brightly with both veneration and madness. This sort of expression was something rarely seen on his face. Bai Xiaochun instantly started to get even more nervous. This last method is the stuff of legend. In fact, in the Heavenspan realm, only one person has ever done it. The requirements are incredibly strict. That method is by using 5 elements diva souls. A diva soul is the soul of a dead diva realm cultivator. One of the unique properties of diva souls is that each one contains the power of one of the 5 elements, either metal, wood, water, fire, or earth. To reach the nascent soul stage using this method requires 5 different diva souls. Anyone who succeeds becomes completely invincible within the nascent soul stage. Bai Xiaochun gasped. 5 diva souls? To him, it seemed almost inconceivable. Devas were already rare to begin with, even in the middle reaches, there were currently only 3 of them. If you added in the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect, there wouldn't even be 10. Considering all of that, using the 5 elements diva souls method seemed virtually impossible. Frigid Sect sighed. From ancient times until now, the number of devas who have existed is very limited, and the souls of any who die are rare and precious items. Because of that, you can see why using the 5 elements diva souls method to step into nascent soul is unimaginably difficult, and thus, the stuff of legend. Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath, and couldn't hold back from asking, Patriarch, didn't you just say that someone did succeed once? Who is that person? Frigid Sect didn't respond for a moment. Looking up into the sky, he said, the Celestial. The Celestial? Bai Xiaochun was taken aback. He is the most powerful cultivator in the Heavenspan realm, and also the one who rules over the 4 great river source sects. He lives on the island in the middle of the Heavenspan Sea. The Celestial. Common people like us can't even speak his name. If you do, he will sense it, and no one wishes to do that. That is why people simply call him the Celestial. Frigid Sect sighed yet again. According to the legends, he reached Heaven Dao Foundation Establishment, Heaven Dao Gold Core, and used the 5 elements diva souls method to reach nascent soul. The entire time, he walked the heavenly path. 1. In Chinese, diva consists of the characters for heaven and person put together, so all 3 of these paths have heaven in them. You've had some contact with the wildlands, so you can probably imagine what type of position the Celestial occupies. Bai Xiaochun reeled as he thought back to the old wildlander he had spoken to by means of Chen Manyao. The things that old man had told him clicked into place with what he had learned just now, and suddenly, he understood. If the 4 main branches of the Heavenspan River and the sects that grew near them were the feudal governments, then this Celestial was the emperor. Bai Xiaochun sat there in silence with Frigid Sect for a long moment. Finally, Frigid Sect rose to his feet and extended his right hand, within which was a blue-green walnut. Apparently, the walnut had been crafted from jade, and inside of it was a sleeping soul. It didn't emanate any soul fluctuations at all, and in fact, even examining it with divine sense didn't reveal the slightest fluctuation. Bai Xiaochun stared at it blankly for a moment. Is that? Frigid Sect looked at the walnut, then at Bai Xiaochun, his expression alive with anticipation. Xiaochun, your service to the river-defying sect has gone above and beyond the call of duty. The fact that you are a member of the river-defying sect is a true blessing. Unfortunately, we are too small and weak now, and are unable to provide you much in the way of help. However, after discussing matters with the fellow Taoists from the other divisions, we all agreed that it was appropriate to take this, a diva soul, and give it to you. Frigid Sect's voice echoed like thunder in Bai Xiaochun's ears, causing his mind and heart to tremble. A diva soul. Bai Xiaochun's eyes widened. If he hadn't just heard Frigid Sect's explanation of the rarity of 5 elements diva souls, he wouldn't have thought this item to be of much value. But now that he understood everything, his heart was filled with waves of shock. It wouldn't be a wild guess to assume that this diva soul was the only one in the entire river-defying sect. In fact, there might not even be a second one in all of the eastern cultivation world of the Middle Reaches. After all, diva souls were items that Middle Reaches sects usually wouldn't possess. It was only because the Spirit Stream division had once been the Frigid School that it had one. This. For the first time ever, Bai Xiaochun didn't reach out to take the treasure being offered him. It was so valuable that he didn't dare to even touch it. We were going to give this to you eventually anyway, Frigid Sect said with a smile. We're just handing it over a bit early. Don't feel any pressure. After all, reaching the nascent soul stage by means of a 5 elements diva soul is something legendary, to say the least. Think of this wood-type diva soul as a direction to follow. If you can't collect any other diva souls, then perhaps you can find someone in the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect with some 5 elements diva beast souls willing to trade for it. Either way, we have long since begun to think about how to make your path to the nascent soul stage as clear as possible. Bai Xiaochun was trembling, and was even having trouble breathing. He looked up at Frigid Sect for a long moment, then clasped hands and bowed deeply. Many thanks, Patriarch. Very well. I've said everything I needed to say, and it's nearly dawn. I'll wait for you at the Grand Hall on Mount River Defiance with the rest of the patriarchs. Patting Bai Xiaochun on the shoulder encouragingly, he turned to leave. For some reason, he seemed especially old underneath the pale moonlight. Bai Xiaochun carefully placed the diva soul into his bag of holding. His mind was currently in chaos. Not only was he feeling really hesitant about leaving the sect, he was deeply and profoundly moved. Soon, dawn arrived, and as the first rays of light pierced through the clouds and illuminated the river-defying sect, they revealed a scene of lush mountains and flowing rivers. Everything was peaceful and quiet, with pulses of spiritual energy filling the entire area. The river-defying sect truly looked like a celestial paradise. A look of determination could be seen in Bai Xiaochun's eyes as he straightened his clothing and headed toward the summit of the mountain. At the same time, Shu Baosai and Master God Diviner gathered their belongings, mustered their courage, and headed in the same direction. Big Fatty Zhang was very excited as he flew into the air, and as for Chen Manyao, she shot through the dawn air in a beam of colorful light. Somewhere in the Bloodstream division, an immortal's cave opened, and Song Ke walked out. His face was ashen, his fists clenched, his teeth gritted. Unfortunately for him, he had no choice in the matter, so he flew up into the air and headed toward Mount River Defiance. In addition to them, other cultivators of the river-defying sect began to step out of their immortals' caves. News had spread over the past few days, and many people knew about the matter of the hostages. In fact, if the sect hadn't specifically forbidden people from visiting Bai Xiaochun to express condolences and bid him farewell, he would have gotten almost no rest. As of this moment, all of the cultivators in the entire sect had emerged. During the past 3 days, they had been prohibited from disturbing Bai Xiaochun, but now, they simply had to see him off. Song Junwan and Hu Xiaomei were in the crowd, both of them looking very sad as they flew toward Mount River Defiance. When Bai Xiaochun arrived at the Grand Hall, he saw Frigid Sect and the other nascent soul cultivators there waiting for him. He also saw that he wasn't the first disciple to arrive. Gongsun Wanner had come a bit earlier, and when she caught sight of Bai Xiaochun, she smiled slightly. Bai Xiaochun had been informed earlier that Gongsun Wanner was also to be a hostage. For some reason, he'd always found there to be something strange about her, although he wasn't sure what. When she looked at him, he forced a smile onto his face and walked over to stand next to her. Strangely, she had no Dao protectors. Surprised by that, he asked, where are your Dao protectors? I don't need any, she replied with a smile. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times, and was about to inquire further when Master God Diviner and Shu Baosai arrived, followed by Big Fatty Zhang and Chen Manyao. Last of all was the ashen-faced Song Ke, who was wearing a very grim expression. Upon arriving, he snorted slightly and then stood next to Master God Diviner, looking somewhat sulky. Cultivators were gathering outside of the mountain to say their farewells to Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun could see Song Junwan and Hu Xiaomei in the crowd, as well as Hu Yunfei, Third Fatty He, and many other familiar faces. None of them could cover up the gloomy expressions on their faces. All of a sudden, Bai Xiaochun realized that his life truly was bitter sometimes. He always seemed to be saying goodbye to people. It had been like this back when he had left the village, and back when he had left the Spirit Stream sect. Now here he was in the river-defying sect, and it was the same thing. Just when he was pondering whether or not to make a short speech like he usually did, an intense pressure suddenly exploded out from the grand hall. At the same time, the door to the hall slowly opened. The boy appeared, clad in a red robe, his hands clasped behind his back. Although he was not very tall, he seemed grander than heaven and earth, which was, of course, because of the heaven-shaking, earth-shattering energy which roiled off of him. As the pressure of the Diva realm filled the entire river-defying sect with solemn silence, the boy looked at Bai Xiaochun and Gongsun Wanner, then nodded slightly. Since everyone's here, let's be off. He waved his hand up into the sky, causing intense rumbling sounds to echo out, as if the sky itself were being crushed. Then, two illusory hands appeared, ripping a huge hole into the air itself. Then, a 30,000-meter-tall giant emerged to hover above in the air. The giant had a powerful fleshly body, and a savage aura. Although it wasn't quite as impressive as the Blood Ancestor, it was still a completely shocking sight. As it hovered there, the mountains below almost seemed like toys that it could crush at will. Gasps could be heard among the river-defying sect cultivators, and even Bai Xiaochun's eyes went wide. That was especially true after the giant threw his head back and howled, then dropped to its knees and prostrated itself in the direction of Mount River Defiance. Master, it said, its voice deafening as it rolled out in all directions. Even as everyone in the sect was shaken, the boy flicked his sleeve, causing the visions of Bai Xiaochun and everyone around him to blur. Their bodies were suddenly filled with pain, and they vanished. When they reappeared moments later, they realized that they were looking down at Mount River Defiance. All of them were now on the head of the giant. To be able to teleport people without any spell formations whatsoever was something that nascent soul cultivators could only do with great difficulty. However, this young boy had done it with the flick of his sleeve, as if it hadn't taken him any effort at all. This was the first time that Bai Xiaochun had been shaken in such a way by a diva. Even more shocking was that each hair on the giant's head was like a huge tree, making his head almost like a forest. Shu Baosai shrieked, and Big Fatty Zhang's face drained of blood. Master God Diviner was left trembling, and even Song Ke started panting a bit. Chen Manyao took things in stride a bit better, whereas Gongsun Wanner was the only one who didn't seem to have any reaction whatsoever. As for Bai Xiaochun, he was a true gold core cultivator, so although his face paled a bit, he stood there in place, looking down at the river-defying sect. Suddenly, he cried out in a loud voice, I'm leaving, but I'll be back. The Diva Realm boy looked over at Bai Xiaochun with a smile, then sat down cross-legged on one of the giant's huge hairs. A moment later, the giant rose to its feet, roared, and leapt back into the hole in the air, vanishing in an instant. The only thing left behind for the river-defying sect cultivators to see were some ripples and the echoes of Bai Xiaochun's voice. Beyond the middle reaches was the true eastern heavenspan river, vast and majestic, so grand that it wasn't possible to see the end of it. It was an area so large that the entire middle reaches cultivation world couldn't even compare to it. If you followed it along far enough, it reached the place where the river flowed out from the sea. In that location was a waterfall so large and boundless that it virtually defied description. It was as tall as an enormous mountain, and so wide that it was impossible to see one end from the other. As the waters flew down, they transformed into the eastern heavenspan river. One could only imagine what existed at the top of that waterfall, the heavenspan sea. The spiritual energy in the area was so strong that it also defied description. The spiritual energy of the middle reaches cultivation world couldn't even compare to it. This was the location of the sect headquarters of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. Shockingly, that headquarters rose up from within the boundless mists at the bottom of the waterfall. Towering high above the waterfall itself were 7 rainbows, which were organized into 3 levels. The first level, and the highest, was made up of a single rainbow. The second level had 2 rainbows, one on the left and one on the right. Beneath them was the third level, made up of 4 rainbows lined up in a row. Considering how enormous the waterfall itself was, it only made sense that the rainbows were even more majestic. Astonishingly, those 7 rainbows were actually part of Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect. Even from a distance, it was just barely possible to see countless indistinct figures flying back and forth through the air, making it very clear how enormous the sect was. Furthermore, those rainbows were only part of the sect. Higher up, at the very top of the waterfall, was an enormous, ancient battleship. It was pitch black, and emanated the most archaic of auras. There was something ghastly about it, and it was even possible to see ghostly figures inside, perhaps the reserve powers of the sect itself. In addition to all that, there were 4 gigantic cities built on the banks of the Heavenspan River, 2 on each side. Any one of those cities alone was larger than any of the 4 great sects of the Middle Reaches, and could clearly house millions upon millions of people. The mere sight of this sect would leave anyone completely shaken. This was the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect. At the base of the waterfall were 4 enormous cities. Towering above the waterfall were 7 rainbows. And behind the waterfall was the Heavenspan Sea. A moment ago, the enormous giant had just stepped out of thin air to appear some distance off from the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect. Bai Xiaochun was on the giant's head, looking at the sect and gasping. The mere size of the sect was enough to cause his head to spin. Then, as he got closer, he could feel the spiritual energy getting stronger, so strong that it was almost uncomfortable. Bai Xiaochun wasn't the only one to have such a reaction. Everyone else was left similarly gasping. Master God Diviner's face was a mask of incredulity. How did they do this? Rainbows are fundamentally immaterial, but that's what the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect actually built their headquarters with. You're right, Chen Manyao said, keeping her voice low. Rainbows are immaterial. However, experts in the demigod realm can take that which is immaterial and make it eternal. Furthermore, the 7 rainbows are strictly separated by a ranking system. From bottom to top, those ranks are Starry, Sky, Tao, Polarity, Mortal, Earth, Heaven. See the highest rainbow? That's Heaven. The next 2 below it are Earth and Mortal. The 4 rainbows which make up the bottom level are Starry, Sky, Tao, and Polarity. We're from the river-defying sect, but technically, we count as the Sky River Court. Therefore, our final destination will be the second rainbow of the 3rd level. Bai Xiaochun listened intently as Chen Manyao explained everything she knew about the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect. Those 4 cities on the banks of the river are nothing more than the outer sect. You see, the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect's ranking system is a bit different from what we're used to. Even Gongsun Wan'er seemed to be surprised at how much Chen Manyao knew, and was listening carefully. The Diva Realm boy opened his eyes and looked over. You seem to know quite a bit, little girl. Chen Manyao's face flickered. Fearful of angering a Diva Realm eccentric, she nervously clasped hands and said, Please don't take offense, senior. None taken, the boy said coolly. The more you explain, the fewer words I have to waste in my own introduction. Listen up, all of you. Just as the girl said, the ranking and organization of the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect is different from that of most other sects, and that's intentional. Most sects have an outer sect, an inner sect, a conclave, and a legacy echelon, or some variation thereof. But not the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect. We are organized by color. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, violet. Those 7 colors are how we organize our sect. It doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're under the nascent soul stage, you have to follow that ranking system. Everyone starts out as a red-robed disciple, and rises in the ranks, not based on cultivation base level, but based on how many merit points you accumulate. The more merit points you get, the higher your rank. Newcomers do not even qualify to step onto the rainbows. Only becoming yellow-robed disciples gives you that right, the right to be promoted from the ground to the rainbows. As the boy talked, the giant strode forward, carrying them toward the second city on the left bank of the Heavenspan River, at the base of the waterfall. Very well, this city is where you will start out. As for where you end up later, that will depend on your own personal good fortune. He rose to his feet, flicking his sleeve to send a jade slip flying over to Bai Xiaochun. Take this jade slip. Once you're in the city, someone will arrange everything for you. With that, he waved his sleeve again, causing a wave of power to pick Bai Xiaochun and the others up and fly them off of the giant's head. Then the giant roared, ripping open the sky in front of it and vanishing into the hole. As for the boy, he also disappeared, reappearing out of sight, far up on the second level rainbow. After the boy left, Bai Xiaochun breathed a sigh of relief. Then he looked over at the huge city, which teemed with countless people, beyond which was the enormous waterfall and the rainbows. This place was gigantic, and completely unfamiliar to Bai Xiaochun, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever, a stranger in a strange land. These 4 huge cities have simple names, Chen Manyao said softly. Starry City, Sky City, Dao City, and Polarity City. Once in the cities, don't make the mistake of underestimating anyone. There could be people with powerful cultivation bases who simply don't have enough merit points to rise beyond the level of being an orange-robed disciple. Remember, in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, everyone under the nascent soul stage is a disciple, and their ranking is based on the color of their robes, not their cultivation base. That is why Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect cultivators are often called 7-colored disciples. With Chen Manyao there to explain things, Bai Xiaochun and the others weren't at such a loss even though they were newcomers to the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. Things were already starting to become clear. What are the requirements to reach the first and second level rainbows? Gongsun Wan'er suddenly asked. Chen Manyao had long since been very leery of Gongsun Wan'er, and thus, did absolutely nothing to conceal her knowledge. The first rainbow is also called the Heaven Rainbow, and is occupied by the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect's one and only demigod patriarch. Beneath it is the Earth Rainbow on the left and the Mortal Rainbow on the right. The Earth Rainbow is for the Devas, and the Mortal Rainbow is for the sect leader. It is also the location of many trials by fire and special cultivation zones. Most terrifying of all is that ancient battleship at the very top of the waterfall, which actually rests on the Heavenspan Sea itself. All of the 4 river source sects have a battleship like that, and they are boundlessly mysterious and infinitely powerful. With that, she glanced over at Bai Xiaochun, clearly done with her explanation, and also obviously not planning to divulge any information about the wildlands. Only she and Bai Xiaochun were aware of her involvement with the wildlands, and he didn't plan to say anything either. As for Gongsun Wan'er, she merely smiled, and didn't ask any further questions. Well, let's go, Bai Xiaochun said with a sigh. Now that we're here, we might as well find a place to settle down. With that, he headed toward the city, and everyone followed along. As they neared the city itself, they sensed invisible fluctuations spreading over all of them. Bai Xiaochun took out the jade slip he'd been given, which began to glow with a bright light that was none other than teleportation power. Before anyone in the group of 7 could react, they had vanished. When they reappeared, they were in a grand hall somewhere in the middle of the city. As soon as they appeared, and before they could even see their surroundings clearly, an icy voice spoke out. Hostage Bai Xiaochun. Hostage Gongsun Wan'er. Within these bags of holding you will find identity medallions and red Taoist robes for both you and your Tao protectors. From this day on, all of you are cultivators of the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect. 2 bags of holding appeared out of thin air and flew toward Bai Xiaochun and Gongsun Wan'er. Before they had a chance to even open them, streams of power wrapped them up and threw them out of the hall. Moments later, they were out on the street. No one even spared them a second glance. Apparently, they were used to people appearing like this. Bai Xiaochun looked around blankly. Xu Baosai and Big Fatty Zhang were a bit pale-faced from the teleportation. Song Ke and Master God Diviner seemed to have handled it a bit better, and Chen Manyao didn't appear to be affected at all. However, the cold reception from the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect was something none of them were used to. Feeling less than pleased with the treatment, Bai Xiaochun took a deep breath, looked back at the grand hall, and shouted, "Hey, I'm an important political hostage." Bai Xiaochun's shout provoked no response from within the hall. Master God Diviner and the others exchanged awkward glances. As for Bai Xiaochun, he was extremely displeased. After all, he was an important political hostage, a status that he felt should come with at least some level of respect. "Right guys?" he said, looking over angrily at Big Fatty Zhang and the others. "Come on, I'm an important political hostage." Big Fatty Zhang cleared his throat and looked left and right, but didn't say anything. "Ah well, whatever. I guess this hostage will just have to rough it out. Alright guys, what should we do now?" Sighing, he looked over at Master God Diviner. Master God Diviner began cautiously, "Well, maybe we should check things out first before making any decisions." Xu Baosai and Big Fatty Zhang seemed to agree with him. Chen Manyao didn't say anything, and Gongsun Wan'er simply stood there with a slight smile on her face. As for Song Ke, he looked just as grim as always, and didn't seem interested at all in even looking at Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun looked around at everyone, and felt a headache coming on. He was already starting to regret bringing all these people with him. However, he couldn't change the situation now. Therefore, he decided to do just as Master God Diviner had suggested, and began walking down the street in the city. As he went along, he slowly forgot about his mistreatment from before. Soon, he began to gasp and let out exclamations of shock. He wasn't the only one to react in such a way, the others were similarly astonished by the things they saw. After all, they were at the source of the entire eastern Heavenspan River, and this city had an enormous population. Most of the people in the city were disciples of the Starry Sky Tao Polarity sect, but others were from various families and clans that had lived in the city for generations. One of the strangest things that Bai Xiaochun realized was that he hadn't seen a single overweight person in the city so far. Everyone was skinny to the point of being gaunt. Some of them even looked like little more than skin and bones. Furthermore, everyone always seemed to be rushing about, as if they didn't want to waste even a bit of time. Another strange thing was that none of them revealed even the tiniest sliver of their cultivation base. Bai Xiaochun was a gold core cultivator, so he was able to pick up some clues here and there. However, most other cultivators would look around and see people who looked like nothing more than mortals. Suppressing his curiosity about that, Bai Xiaochun focused on all the things that were for sale in the city. Just about anything could be bought, from spirit treasures to magical items to ancient books. There were all sorts of medicinal pills as well. There was spirit food available, some of which was made from precious materials of heaven and earth. Other spirit foods were the meats of different types of wild beasts. The prices for the spirit foods were astronomical, and yet to the surprise of Bai Xiaochun and his companions, people still would buy them, although it always seemed to be with some level of reluctance. Bai Xiaochun had never seen such a bustling city before, nor had any of his companions. Thus, they took their time strolling through the city, slowly taking in all the sights and sounds. As time passed, they were convinced of one thing: prices in the city were simply beyond belief. Thankfully, Bai Xiaochun had been given a sizable sum of spirit stones back in the river-defying sect, but even with what he had, it only took a quick calculation on his part to come to the conclusion that he didn't have enough to buy any of the things he really wanted. After a few hours of wandering the city, the entire group came to another shocking realization. For some reason, all of them were very hungry. This development caused their eyes to grow wide. After all, once cultivators reached foundation establishment, they didn't need to consume physical food. Instead, they subsided on spiritual energy alone. But as of this moment, a sensation of profound hunger had risen up within all of them. What's going on? I'm hungry. Bai Xiaochun rubbed his belly and then looked over at Chen Manyao with a confused expression on his face. Chen Manyao was also clearly taken aback. After a moment of thought, she pulled out a jade slip which she used to send a message to someone. After a moment, an odd expression appeared on her face. Looking around at her companions, she hesitated, then said, "Did any of you notice that your cultivation bases have progressed already?" Everyone quickly checked their cultivation bases, and sure enough, it was just as Chen Manyao had said. They hadn't experienced huge advancements, but the evidence was there. They had just been so entranced by the bustling city that they hadn't noticed. Chen Manyao went on to explain, "Considering how close we are to the Heavenspan Sea, the spiritual energy is especially strong, and after entering our bodies, it throws our 5 yin organs into chaos. Although it causes our cultivation bases to advance more quickly, it's also very draining on us. That's why we're feeling hungry. Essentially, the energy drain is so severe that we can't sustain our cultivation without eating normal food." Even as Chen Manyao explained the situation, Bai Xiaochun's stomach began to grumble loudly. When she finished speaking, his face fell. Other than death, the thing he feared most in life was hunger. Back on Fragrant Cloud Peak when he had begun to practice the Undying Live Forever technique, he had almost starved to death. After reaching foundation establishment, he had never felt the pangs of hunger, but now, here they were rising up again. Chen Manyao smiled bitterly and said, "Furthermore, I just asked a friend of mine, and was told that everyone in the city has to eat a huge amount of food every day to replenish their energy. Also, it has to be spirit food." Big Fatty Zhang was already starting to get very nervous. Just like Bai Xiaochun, he feared hunger as if it were the shadow of death. So does that mean we have to be eating constantly? Once you become a yellow-robed disciple and get into the Rainbow District, then the aura there will aid in your absorption of spiritual energy, and the problem will resolve itself naturally. Chen Manyao's brow was also furrowed because of the sensation of hunger she felt. Gongsun Wanner rubbed her belly, licked her lips, and then chuckled. "Well then, I think I'll go get something to eat. See you all later." With that, she waved at them and melted into the crowd. "Junior Patriarch, what do we do?" Master God Diviner said, looking at Bai Xiaochun. I'm hungry too. Shu Baosai had the same reaction, and even grim-faced Song Ke finally turned to look expectantly at Bai Xiaochun. Rubbing his bag of holding anxiously, Bai Xiaochun gritted his teeth and said, "Let's just suck it up for now. We need to find a place to stay first, then we can worry about how to get something to eat." The others agreed that it was a good idea. All of them produced some medicinal pills to temporarily relieve their hunger, and then began searching through the city for a place to stay. Soon, they found the location where Starry Sky Dao Polarity Sect disciples could get Immortals Caves, which was when Bai Xiaochun learned that all the Immortals Caves were rented out, not sold. After looking over the rent prices, Bai Xiaochun couldn't help but gasp. This is way too expensive. The cultivator in charge was an orange-robed disciple, and all he did was look at Bai Xiaochun coldly, refusing to even say a word. It was soon apparent from the incredible prices that only very wealthy people could afford Immortals Caves here. Ordinary people had to settle for spirit abodes. Of course, the prices for spirit abodes were also very high. Since they had few options available, Bai Xiaochun and his companions agreed to rent the cheapest spirit abode they could find. By the time they acquired the Jade Slip Key and found the spirit abode in the city, it was starting to get dark outside. It was located in the city's East District, and was very simple and crude. It actually reminded Bai Xiaochun of his residence back in the village when he was young. Furthermore, to his agony, renting it for half a year cost him half of the spirit stones he'd been given by the sect. A whole day had been wasted already, and all of them were getting increasingly hungry. By this point, all of their stomachs were grumbling loudly. Sighing, Bai Xiaochun tossed the bag of spirit stones over to Master God Diviner and told him to go find some food. Master God Diviner excitedly caught the bag of holding and then rushed out, to return shortly with a large collection of spirit food which he divided out equally. Now that they had food, everyone sat around silently eating, wrapped up in their own thoughts. As for Bai Xiaochun, he couldn't stop thinking about how much he missed the river-defying sect. The night passed silently. The next day at dawn, Bai Xiaochun was awoken by the sound of his own grumbling stomach. Looking around at everyone else, he could tell that they already looked a bit skinnier than they had the day before. Damn it, what wickedness is this? How are we supposed to deal with this? It was a terrifying situation. He was so hungry he could hardly see straight. Producing more spirit stones, he asked Master God Diviner to go out again to buy spirit food. And that was how the first day passed. Then a second day went by, and a third, and a fourth. During that time, everyone from the group went out to explore the city at some point, but would return frowning and settle down cross-legged and unmoving, not willing to waste any energy. Despite trying to save energy, all of them, Bai Xiaochun included, were started to get much thinner. That was especially true of Shu Baosai, who was already at the point of looking like skin and bones. However, none of that was truly frightening. What scared them the most was that the bag of holding was on the verge of running out of spirit stones, most likely within 2 days. Even Bai Xiaochun's personal bag of holding was almost 90% devoid of spirit stones. "We have to think of a plan," he said passionately, looking around at everyone with a serious look on his face. "Going on like this won't work. You guys are my Dao protectors. Go out and make some money." Almost as soon as the words left his mouth, Song Ke rose to his feet, a look of determination flickering in his eyes, as well as a bit of madness. Bai Xiaochun looked at him curiously, and was just about to ask what he was going to do when Song Ke blurted, "I've had enough of this." "Enough, do you hear me, Bai Xiaochun? Dao protector? Forget it, I quit. Song Ke can solve his own problems for himself. From now on, you're on your own. It all comes down to the merit points, right? Maybe I wasn't a match for you in the Bloodstream sect, or in the River-defying sect, but here in the Starry Sky Dao Polarity sect, I'm going to become a yellow-robed disciple on my own merit, and get promoted to the Rainbow District." Bai Xiaochun's eyes widened angrily, and he was just about to offer a retort, when suddenly Master God Diviner rose to his feet. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.